Earlier this year, I posted polls to the Warframe forums and Reddit and asked fellow players simply what were their top 5 picks for each weapon type, primaries, secondaries, and melee weapons. These didn't have to be the most efficient, most played, most damaging, or just their favorites. It was simply their top 5 for whatever they wanted to play with. My personal goal was to figure out what was being played with the least. Here's why. Warframe is a game most often played around the mid-tier of the game's difficulty. Depending on your progression, this means facing enemies that are somewhere between level 25 to 45, give or take 5 levels. But what this allows for those of us who feel that variety is the spice of Warframe's life is that we don't always have to play with the most efficient, badass, end-all be-all weapons to enjoy our gameplay. My goal here in the 88th Armory is to show you some of those weapons you might have written off or haven't picked up in a long time, and to find builds for the mid-game that might possibly find their way into the endgame. I'm Scott from Ramble Entertainment, and this is Season 1 of the 88th Armory. So today what we want to talk about is the Elemental Sandstorm mod with Inaros, from our perspective here in the 88th, where we shoot for mid-tier builds. Before we get going, a couple of things, if you're wondering what that is off in the picture, that is a Christmas tree. 'Tis the season, and additionally, as I mentioned last week, this will be the last time I use this style of format for the 88th, where I kind of do a regular build, and then I do a comparison build at the end. What I've come to find as I've been doing this show is that the variety in Warframe is wonderful, especially when you play a lot of mid-game content, and I want to explore that a lot more. I want to have 1 build per video, and then that will allow me to do 3, maybe even 4 videos per week. Now, next week, since it's going to be the first week of that format, and I did just start my first job in 4 years, since I have lived in pain for the last 4 years because of both my legs, I'm probably going to only start with 2 videos and then work into 3 so that I can keep the ball rolling, I don't get behind, and we can all enjoy this together. So, let's talk about Elemental Sandstorm. I feel like the biggest disappointment for me with this mod, this augment, has been a lot of the talk that I have personally found around it, where it's not considered very good, it's not considered high level enough, and really for me that's part of the problem that I really think I am trying to address here on the show, where we're talking about the things that don't have to be high level. I'm at Hydron, on Sedna, a map that a lot of people go to level things, and I'm leveling weapons, and I'm using this Elemental Sandstorm to do a lot of damage and have a good time. So, the builds I use for this, I have no codex entry to show here, so this is the first Warframe I'm showing on the show, and so I wasn't sure how to approach this, so I went with simple. The build I'm using here relies on Viral, Slash, and Fire, a kind of Hellfire Sandstorm. And admittedly, there is a Sarin here playing with us on this map. I queued into a random queue. Probably should have removed their names. Something to remember for down the road. Anyway, so yeah, I utilized the Viral proc to reduce health, use Slash to continue doing more damage on top of the damage done by Sandstorm, and then add Fire since I want to continue to do damage. So let's actually pull up damage 3.0 as we continue to look at this build. So what we want to analyze here with damage 2.0, I think I said 3.0, and what we want to analyze here with damage 2.0 is what we get out of our statuses, not looking at the damage figures, not looking at any of these damage figures, not looking at any of the Grenier or infested or corrupted damage figures, just looking at what our statuses, what our status effect up here, what our status effect actually does for us in this build. And so we're looking for things like bleed, and we want more damage. So if we go to Toxin, we've got health damage over time. If you look at heat, fire damage over time plus panic. And then you have with viral minus maximum health. Now, if you were to say try to add cold, you're not really getting any added benefit out of it when looking at a sandstorm, an elemental sandstorm build. When you look at puncture, you're not getting anything out of it really, just minus damage. Possibly if you're looking for a control style build, you might go for something like this, or potentially an additional slowdown for when the enemies land after you're done with the sandstorm. Moving forward, so if we're looking to actually do damage and have fun in the mid game, I went with bleed, of course, because it can bypass shields and armor, and then I wanted to reduce max health to improve TTK, time to kill, it for these lower mid-level enemies, and then we wanted to add something additional, so I went with fire damage over time, since we couldn't get the health damage over time due to utilizing the viral status. So moving forward, that's my base build. Now, there might be those that argue that maybe you want corrosive. I personally don't think so, because, again, we're looking for a build at the mid-level. I do think there is potential for some higher level builds here. However, I just don't think that they are really what we want to shoot for with this augment. What we want to shoot for is fun. So, with some survival footage playing in the background, let's go ahead and start looking at our builds, or really one mod style kind of build here. Again, I want to emphasize that I'm not telling you guys that this is the way you should play. I'm just looking for builds that I enjoy in the mid game that might give you a hint of what you could potentially enjoy in the mid game. Take a look at things for yourself and maybe tweak what I have or go with something of your own to enjoy. Now, Elemental Sandstorm is the augment mod that we're focusing on here that has a 50% chance of inflicting status effects, which is important. Again, not elemental damage, but status effects, and that's based on the damage types of an equipped melee weapon. Now, I think it's important to note here that the ticks of damage that Sandstorm does is a lot more like Saren's viral procs, where you're not doing ticks of damage like one at a time like Banshee's Soundquake. You're doing tons per second, and so that's a lot of opportunity to continue doing these status effects, your viral procs, your slash procs, and heat for additional damage. And what I think this build really boils down to is a one mod style balance, and that's overextended. Overextended basically adjusts our range, so we add more range but reduces the damage we're doing. And what we can do is, if you have multiple overextendeds like I use, you can go with a rank 2 or rank 3 overextended, and I'm using a rank 3 overextended in this background footage compared to the rank 4 overextended I was using in the first footage. So I'm doing more damage in this background footage. Damn, I'm tired. It's been a long week. Anyway, I'm doing more damage in this background video over less range. So basically, probably reducing range by roughly 3 meters, and then increasing damage by roughly, it's hard to calculate because of the bleed and the heat, but probably roughly 150 to 200 more damage potentially over the amount of enemies within a given sandstorm. So Additionally, I think it is also worth noting that there is room for some higher-end builds here. I feel like this build runs between level 30 to 45 to 50 enemies, based on what you're going with. And, of course, we also have here a rank 2 overextended. I don't think having a rank 1 overextended is worth having. That's basically like stretch, in my opinion. Of course, you can have two 45% range mods, but it's up to you, really, as we said. So being that this is a one mod kind of build, I want to look at the build I use on Glaive Prime. Now, I lensed Glaive Prime, so I really haven't been using it much. I feel like that's something I'm going to definitely talk about on State of the Frame is Focus 2.0, the fact that they're talking about taking a sledgehammer to it, or I guess not even Focus 2.0, Focus 1.0, what it will be, kind of the pitfalls of the first beta version of Focus, and yeah, what we could hopefully or potentially see on the other side of a Focus 1.0, since there technically hasn't been a first Focus, it's been in beta, and one of the pitfalls is having lenses on items that really never needed them, and so I use the Glaive or Glaive Prime to fulfill the need for Inaros to have a specific weapon with just status effects on it, and what I utilize is Viral, as I mentioned, utilizing more Viral because really you don't have to put anything else on this weapon except status. And then, of course, we add Slash, and I also added Heat just to fill in an extra element. And then I did some testing personally, and while it's really hard to determine if Lasting Sting is adding that much more duration, I feel the testing I did suited basically my need for evidence that it works. Perhaps it doesn't. You will have to test on your own if you want to find out if Lasting Sting does or does not work with this build. But really what this comes down to is pointing out that find a weapon that you really don't use. I hold on to primes like Fang Prime, and I would have used Fang Prime for this build for Inaros. However, when it comes down to it, Fang doesn't have Slash, so you can't add Slash to it. And so I went with the Glaive, and it spins, so it fits. So really, yeah, I think that there is potential room for, say, a Toxic Slash and Lasting Sting build against the Corpus. If you want to maybe look at higher potential level builds, maybe look at that Corrosive build, but outside of those three, I don't really think there is too much to this. So the last build I want to look at, with footage playing in the background, is a converted build where we sack range for strength and efficiency by reducing our range to roughly a standard range where we're at about 15 to 18 meters with Sandstorm, and getting more efficiency, and of course, without overextended, achieving more damage. This is what I want to refer to and look at more in the next version of the 88th as a hallway hero. Basically, I think, at the very least, me and mine have gotten in this mentality of like, oh, 30 to 50 meters or bust. But really, that's not the case. You don't always have to control these massive areas. You don't always have to do damage over these mass areas. Instead, you can have these hallway hero style builds, frames, where you go into a small space, let the enemies funnel to you, and do your damage there instead of having to try to balance between range and duration and strength at the same time. There is this opportunity to achieve more damage over a more limited style space. And really that's what this build is about, the ability to improve efficiency and then move into more damage. So let's go ahead and get rid of that and wrap up what is the last style of the 88th. So again, what I've really noticed here is that I've been doing 2 builds per video, and I think that we can have even more builds per week where I'm just looking at a single build and look at all kinds of different variety within the game, because even this show has opened my own eyes to how much variety we can potentially have. even when looking at Inaros with the Elemental Sandstorm, I might even look at a build where we completely sack range, go for a full narrow-minded, and that, of course, limits your range, but add more strength, potentially with Blind Rage, and then swap Streamline for Fleeting Expertise. So you're getting about roughly the same efficiency, but doing more damage over a limited area, doing almost single target damage. That'd be cool to check out. Maybe put Corrosive on it and really get up into some high-tier enemies. Anyways, after dying here, there's no other thing to say than this has been the first version of the 88th Armory. Expect 2 88th Armories next week, and then the week after we're going to shoot for 3. We'll see how that goes. I want to remind you guys that I did just get a job, first job after 4 years of being unemployed due to health issues, and now I'm trying to balance getting these videos out to you guys while additionally working a job, making some money, moving my life forward. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you do the thing, and I will see you next week for a better version of the 88th where we get to look at even more awesome stuff. See you next time.